The galaxy had learned to be quiet when the Tyrants spoke. Worlds went dark. Stars changed hands. Entire species bent their heads and waited for commands that always came with pain. The Tyrants did not shout or threaten. They did not need to. Fear followed them like gravity. It was older than their empire and deeper than memory. No one remembered a time when the Tyrants had ever been afraid. In the black halls of the High Dominion, the ruling caste gathered around a ring of light. Images of conquered systems drifted slowly in the air. Burned planets, broken fleets, silent cities. The Tyrants watched without emotion. To them this was order. This was peace. A lesser official stepped forward and hesitated. Fear was clear in the way his limbs shook. He activated a small projection. A blue star appeared, surrounded by thin lines that marked primitive travel routes. This system, the official said, forcing his voice steady, has begun sending signals beyond its region. The species calls itself human. A low sound passed through the chamber. Not anger. Not interest. Amusement. The Tyrants studied the data. The species was divided into nations. They fought among themselves. They had no unified government, no psychic link, no ancient wisdom. Their technology was uneven and crude by galactic standards. They had not yet claimed another star. The Tyrants laughed. One of the elder rulers leaned closer to the image. They destroy their own kind, it said. They poison their own world. Why would they survive long enough to matter? Another ruler waved a claw. Mark them as irrelevant. The galaxy is full of such noise. The official swallowed. There is one thing, Dominion Lords, that earns silence. The official expanded the data. Human history flooded the air. Wars stacked on wars. Plagues. Collapsing empires. Near-extinction events. Again and again the humans had come close to ending themselves. But they did not, the official said. Each time they adapted. They rebuilt. Their numbers recovered. Their weapons improved. The Tyrants watched more closely now. Not with fear. With curiosity. They should have broken, one ruler said. Any other species would have. Yes, the official replied. But they did not. The chamber grew still. Not because the Tyrants felt threatened. Because something did not fit their understanding of the galaxy. The Tyrants had studied thousands of species. Patterns were easy to see. Fragile species collapsed early. Strong ones rose and then hardened into predictable shapes. Fear ruled them all. Fear of loss. Fear of death. Fear of extinction. Humans seemed to live inside fear and move anyway. A Tyrant scientist spoke from the shadows. Their world is hostile. Their bodies are weak. Their lives are short. Yet they act as if tomorrow is owed to them. The elder ruler's eyes narrowed slightly. Do they know fear? The scientist paused. Yes, but it does not stop them. That answer lingered longer than it should have. The Tyrants ordered observation. Nothing more. They would watch this strange species until it destroyed itself, as all flawed beings eventually did. There was no reason to interfere. Across the galaxy, on a small blue world, humans did not know they were being watched. They lived their small lives. They argued. They dreamed. They built machines that barely held together. They looked at the stars with wonder and doubt. And they kept going. Years passed in silence. The Tyrants checked the data only when boredom demanded it. Each time the humans were still there. Their signals were stronger. Their ships traveled farther. Their conflicts continued, but so did their cooperation. The Tyrants felt no fear. But irritation began to grow. How can they survive such chaos? One ruler asked. They should have collapsed, another said. Their history is weakness layered on weakness. Yet every weakness had forced the humans to learn, to adapt, to harden their minds. The Tyrants did not see heroes or great leaders. They saw something worse. They saw endurance. At last, the High Dominion decided to act. Not out of fear. Out of certainty. A small fleet would be sent. A test. A reminder of the natural order. The humans would fall quickly and the galaxy would return to silence. The fleet was small by Tyrant standards. Enough to crush a world. Not enough to be worth remembering. As the ships moved, human sensors noticed strange shadows at the edge of space. Warnings spread through quiet channels. No panic followed. Only focus. Human leaders gathered. They did not shout. They did not boast. They studied the data and understood one simple truth. They were not ready to win a war. So they chose not to fight one. The outer colony was evacuated in silence. No signals. No pleas. When the Tyrant fleet arrived, they found weak defenses and slow resistance. The colony fell just as the Tyrants expected. But in the final moments, a small burst escaped the system. It carried everything the humans had learned. Weapon signatures, movement patterns, command delays. The Tyrants did not notice. They celebrated the easy victory. In the High Dominion, laughter returned. Predictable, one ruler said. They break like all the rest. But the scientist did not laugh. It stared at the data feed, at something subtle and wrong. The humans did not scream, it said quietly. The rulers ignored it. Far away, human command reviewed the data in silence. Faces were hard. Loss was real. Pain was felt. But no one spoke of surrender. Instead, plans were drawn. Systems were emptied. Old ships were stripped and rebuilt. Every mistake the Tyrants made was recorded and studied. Humans did not rage. They did not rush. They waited. Because fear was not new to them. Fear had shaped them since the first night they learned the dark could bite back. And as the Tyrants turned their eyes away, certain the matter was finished, something dangerous began to rise. Not an army. Not a weapon. But a species that had learned, again and again, how to stand up after the fall. The Tyrants still had no fear. They would soon understand why that was a mistake. The Tyrants recorded the fall of the human colony as a success and moved on. To them it was a clean result. A weak outpost erased. A message sent. Fear restored. The fleet withdrew without damage, leaving behind silent ruins and frozen debris. In the High Dominion, the event was logged and forgotten within a single cycle. But the galaxy did not move the way the Tyrants believed it did. In human space, there was no celebration, no speeches, and no false hope. The loss of the colony spread quietly across networks and private channels. Names were read. Faces were remembered. The dead were not used as symbols. They were treated as a cost that had to mean something. Human command did not ask if war was coming. They already knew. What mattered was how long they could delay it. Deep beneath layers of rock and steel, analysts replayed the data burst again and again. Tyrant weapons were powerful, but they followed strict rules. Their fleets moved like machines built for obedience, not adaptation. Every strength carried a weakness, and humans were very good at finding cracks. The Tyrants believed fear ended resistance. Humans knew fear sharpened it. Across Earth and its colonies, industries shifted without announcement. Civilian factories changed output. Old ships were pulled from storage and torn down to their frames. Engineers worked without rest, not because they were ordered to, but because they understood what was coming. No banners were raised. No calls for glory were made. The humans prepared to survive. Far away, the Tyrants noticed strange movements at the edge of human space. Systems went quiet. Trade lanes emptied. It looked like retreat. It looked like panic. The Tyrant High Command approved a deeper advance. If they run, one ruler said, then they already fear us. The fleet grew larger this time. Not enough to trouble the Empire, but enough to end the matter completely. Human space would be broken piece by piece until submission followed. What the Tyrants did not understand was that humans were not running. They were removing targets. As the Tyrant Armada pushed forward, they found worlds stripped bare. Stations abandoned. No resistance fleets. No final stands. The silence felt wrong, but the Tyrants dismissed the thought. Fear makes prey hide, a commander said. We hunt. Inside the fleet, discipline was perfect. Orders flowed downward without question. That was the Tyrants' greatest strength. And their oldest weakness. Human observers watched from far beyond sensor range. They did not track the fleet as a whole. They tracked individuals. Captains. Command patterns. Response delays. They learned how Tyrants thought. The first human strike did not look like an attack. A single Tyrant scout ship lost navigation for 3 seconds and collided with a debris field. Its destruction was logged as an accident. Hours later, a relay station failed and cut communication between 2 wings of the fleet. Engineers blamed faulty hardware. Then a supply convoy vanished between jumps. Still, the Tyrants felt no fear. Problems happened in war. The humans were clearly disorganized. Retreating. Failing. Then a Tyrant destroyer fired on an empty moon. The order had not come from its commander. The ship's system showed a valid command code. Perfectly formed. Perfectly timed. The destroyer obeyed, wasting energy and revealing its position. Confusion spread, slow and heavy. The Tyrants did not believe the humans could do this. No species had ever broken Tyrant command systems before. Their technology was ancient and secure. Human analysts smiled without joy. They had not broken the systems. They had learned how Tyrants trusted them. In the High Dominion, the scientist who had first questioned humanity studied the new reports. Fleet efficiency was dropping. Not by much. Just enough to notice. They are not attacking our ships, the scientist said. They are attacking how we think. The rulers dismissed the concern. Humans are still hiding, one said. They are afraid to face us. The scientist did not answer. It had reviewed human history more deeply than the others. Humans had a pattern. When overwhelmed, they did not meet force with force. They changed the battlefield. As the Tyrant fleet approached what they believed was the human core, space itself seemed to resist them. Navigation errors increased. Sensors showed ghosts where no ships existed. Communication lag grew worse. Still, no human fleet appeared. The Tyrant commanders grew angry. Anger was not something they often felt. It clouded judgment. That was another weakness. A forward Tyrant task group was ordered to advance alone and force a reaction. They entered a system rich with asteroids and energy fields. It looked like a trap, but the Tyrants had never feared traps. That was when human drones activated. They were small. Countless. They did not attack directly. They swarmed sensors, flooded targeting systems, and forced Tyrant weapons to track meaningless motion. The task group fired anyway. In the chaos, 2 Tyrant ships collided. Another lost power and drifted helplessly. Human fire struck then, precise and cold. Not enough to destroy the group. Enough to cripple it. The humans withdrew immediately. The Tyrants were left staring at their own wreckage. For the first time, a Tyrant commander hesitated before reporting. Fear still did not exist in the High Dominion. But doubt had entered. How did they strike without a fleet? One ruler demanded. They did not seek victory, the scientist replied. They sought information. And control. The rulers were silent longer than usual. In human space there was no celebration. The engagement had been costly. Humans had lost ships, lives. But the data gained was worth more than the losses. Human command updated its projections. They were still outmatched. But the gap was closing. Human civilians were told nothing of the details. They were only told to trust the process, to move when asked, to build when needed. Most did. Humans were used to uncertainty. Used to imperfect leaders. Used to surviving anyway. The Tyrants prepared their next move. Larger fleets. Harsher strikes. Total domination. They still believed fear would end this. They did not yet understand the truth. Humans were not fearless. They were practiced. And every step the Tyrants took deeper into human space pulled them farther from the kind of war they knew how to win. The Tyrants changed their strategy. The slow confusion, the lost ships, the damaged command chains, these were no longer acceptable. If the humans would not face them, then the Tyrants would force them to. The High Dominion issued a clear order: take a populated human world and make an example of it. Fear, they believed, was still the final weapon. The target was chosen carefully. A mid-level colony. Not too weak, not too strong. Enough people to be seen. Enough industry to hurt. The fleet moved with overwhelming force, broadcasting its arrival across open space. This time there would be no silence. Human sensors detected the fleet days in advance. The signal was impossible to miss. On the surface of the colony, the sky filled with warning lights and evacuation alarms. People ran. Families clung together. Transports lifted in endless waves. But not everyone left. A small group remained behind. Engineers. Signal officers. Military observers. They had volunteered. Not for glory. For time. Human command did not plan to save the world. They planned to learn from its fall. The Tyrant fleet entered orbit and found defenses waiting. Old platforms. Outdated weapons. Enough resistance to look serious but not enough to stop them. The Tyrants pushed forward with confidence. Human weapons fired first. Missiles streaked upward. Lasers burned against shields. The Tyrants returned fire without hesitation. Defense stations vanished in bright flashes. Cities were struck. The surface burned. And then something strange happened. The humans stopped firing. Not because they were defeated. Because the plan had reached its next stage. Across the planet, hidden systems activated. Deep sensors locked onto every Tyrant ship. Civilian satellites, mining equipment, even weather platforms began transmitting streams of data. Everything the Tyrants did was recorded. The Tyrants noticed none of it. They landed troops and found resistance where it should not have existed. Human soldiers did not charge. They did not hold ground. They hit supply lines, destroyed landing craft, and vanished into cities designed to confuse invaders. Urban warfare dragged on longer than expected. Too long. The Tyrant commanders grew frustrated. Losses were small but constant. Humans fought in small groups, using the environment as a weapon. Every street became a trap. Every building a threat. When the Tyrants finally secured the planet, the victory felt hollow. Then the humans detonated the planet's core stabilizers. The explosion did not destroy the world. It shattered it. The crust broke apart in slow, terrible motion. Oceans boiled into space. The Tyrant fleet was forced to retreat to avoid debris. From a safe distance, the Tyrants watched the planet die. And they did not understand why the humans were smiling in their final transmissions. In the High Dominion, the reaction was sharp. They destroyed their own world, one ruler said in disgust. They truly are broken. The scientists spoke again. They denied us control. They chose the shape of their loss. That idea unsettled the chamber more than the destruction itself. Human command reviewed the outcome with cold precision. The loss was massive. Millions dead. A world gone. But the data gathered was unprecedented. Tyrant response times. Shield limits. Ground doctrine. Weaknesses in troop coordination. The cost was unbearable. And still humans paid it. The galaxy watched in silence. Other species saw only madness. Only despair. No one understood why humanity did not beg for mercy. The Tyrants moved deeper. That was exactly what humans wanted. Human space folded inward, drawing the Tyrant fleets toward carefully prepared regions. Every system the Tyrants took made their supply lines longer. Every victory slowed them. Then came the message. For the first time, humans spoke openly. The signal was broadcast on all channels. No threats. No anger. Just words. "We see you," the message said. "And we are learning." The Tyrants laughed. But laughter did not feel as strong as it once had. Within the advancing fleets, problems multiplied. Fuel shortages. Delayed orders. Conflicting commands. Human interference grew bolder. Drones struck deeper. False signals caused ships to fire on shadows. One Tyrant carrier turned its weapons on its own escort after receiving a command that looked correct in every way. The Tyrants executed the commander for incompetence. Fear still did not exist. But cracks were spreading. Human command made a decision that would have horrified any other species. They opened their inner systems and let the Tyrants see them. Industrial worlds. Population centers. The illusion of vulnerability was complete. The Tyrants took the bait. A massive armada formed, larger than any before. This would be the final blow. The human species would break and the galaxy would return to order. As the fleet gathered, something else moved. Human fleets emerged from deep space. Not to attack. To observe. They stayed just outside engagement range, watching the Tyrants assemble. The Tyrants noticed. At last, a human commander requested direct communication. The Tyrant Supreme War Leader accepted, eager to witness human surrender. The human appeared calm. Tired. Focused. "You are winning," the human said. "And that is why you will lose." The Tyrant leader snarled and cut the channel. But the words stayed. As the Tyrant armada prepared to jump, space around them changed. Subtle distortions spread through the void. Human technology activated across multiple systems at once. The trap was not a battlefield. It was the war itself. And the Tyrants were already standing at its center. The Tyrant armada jumped together. It was a show of power meant to end resistance in a single movement. Thousands of ships tore through folded space, emerging inside what sensors marked as humanity's inner defensive line. The Tyrants expected alarms, fleets, desperate counterattacks. They found none. The system was quiet. Too quiet. Stars burned normally. Planets followed their paths. No mines. No visible defenses. The armada spread out, confident, claiming space that appeared undefended. Command channels filled with routine confirmations. The Tyrants had arrived at the heart of human territory. Then navigation began to drift. At first it was subtle. Ships reported tiny mismatches between predicted and actual positions. Nothing dangerous. Easily corrected. Tyrant pilots adjusted course and moved on. But the corrections did not hold. Space itself seemed to slide. Jump points no longer aligned where they should. Distances felt wrong. Two ships traveling side by side emerged light seconds apart. Formation integrity weakened, and the armada was forced to slow. Irritation spread through command ranks. Engineers blamed unknown stellar interference. Scientists blamed local anomalies. Orders were issued to push forward regardless. That was when the stars went dark. Not all at once. One by one, navigation beacons vanished. Then background radiation spiked, flooding sensors with false echoes. The void filled with phantom signals. Ships appeared where none existed. Threat warnings screamed, then contradicted themselves. The Tyrants fired on the Phantoms. Nothing was hit. Weapons overheated. Shields strained. Energy reserves dropped faster than expected. Still, no enemy fleet appeared. Inside the Armada, fear should have begun. But fear was not something the Tyrants understood. They tightened control instead. Command authority was centralized. Independent decisions were forbidden. Every ship was ordered to wait for direct instruction. Obedience restored order, but it also slowed response to a crawl. Human command watched the changes with careful eyes. They had not turned space against the Tyrants. They had taught space to lie to them. Human devices, seated across dozens of systems years earlier, activated in sequence. Gravity nudges. Signal echoes. Artificial background noise woven so deeply into reality that it could not be filtered out without shutting down entire sensor arrays. The Tyrants relied on perfect information. Humans relied on operating blind. The first real human strike came without warning. A Tyrant logistics hub vanished in a silent implosion. No explosion. No energy spike. Its internal gravity collapsed inward, crushing the station into itself. Nearby ships scrambled, but their targeting failed. Human weapons had already disengaged. The Tyrants reeled, not from loss, but from confusion. How did they reach that target? Commanders demanded. The answer was simple. The humans had never left. Hidden in the noise, human vessels drifted between the Tyrant ships. Cold. Silent. Using the Armada's own energy emissions as cover. They did not fire often. They did not chase kills. They struck where it hurt most and disappeared again. Supply ships vanished. Repair craft failed to arrive. Command relays flickered and died. The Armada began to starve while fully armed. In the High Dominion, the scientists stood alone before the rulers. They are not fighting our fleet, it said. They are dismantling our certainty. One ruler slammed a claw into the floor. Order a direct engagement. Draw them out. The command was set. The Tyrant Armada advanced toward the largest human population world still visible on their maps. This time the humans did not hide. They answered. Human fleets appeared in controlled waves. Smaller than the Tyrants. Fewer ships. No attempt to match numbers. They formed simple lines and held position. The Tyrants surged forward, weapons blazing. Human ships did not break formation. They absorbed the first strike with layered defenses designed to fail slowly instead of collapsing. Ships burned. Crews died. The line held. Then the humans returned fire. Not at the fleet. At the command ships. Targeted strikes ripped through bridge sections, command cores, and communication hubs. Tyrant ships continued fighting, but without coordination. Orders conflicted. Retreats became advances. Advances turned into collisions. Human fleets shifted, always just beyond full engagement range, forcing the Tyrants to chase. Every pursuit stretched formations thinner. Every minute drained more resources. The Tyrants were still winning battles. They were losing the war. On the human population world below, civilians watched the sky burn. They were afraid. They had always been afraid. But evacuation plans were followed. Shelters held. Supply lines functioned. Human society bent but did not shatter. The Tyrants noticed something that unsettled them more than resistance. Humans were not panicking. They were enduring. A Tyrant commander finally disobeyed orders. Faced with failing systems and mounting losses, it attempted an independent jump to regroup. The jump failed. Space folded incorrectly, tearing the ship apart. That was when the first Tyrant felt something new. Not pain. Not anger. Uncertainty. The idea spread faster than any weapon. What if the humans were controlling where space was safe? What if retreat was no longer possible? The Supreme War Leader demanded answers and received none. Every report contradicted the last. Every certainty dissolved under scrutiny. Human command issued a single internal update. Phase 3 was successful. They had proven something vital. The Tyrants could be slowed. Confused. Isolated. They were not gods. They were just very dangerous creatures who had never been hunted before. As the Armada struggled to maintain cohesion, a new signal spread across the battlefield. Clear. Undeniable. Human. You are deep in our space, the message said. Every moment you stay, you bleed. The Tyrants tried to silence the signal. They failed. For the first time in their long history, the Tyrants began to consider a thought that had never served them before. What if advancing was no longer the path to victory? And what if the humans knew that already? The Tyrants tried to regroup. Orders were issued from the remaining command ships, sharp and absolute. Fleets were to pull back into tighter formations. Supply ships were to be protected at all costs. Any vessel that lost contact was to be considered destroyed and ignored. The Armada would move as one again or would not move at all. For the first time, obedience worked against them. The Tyrant fleet slowed, compressed into dense clusters that made coordination easier but movement harder. Human observers noted the change immediately. The Tyrants had chosen safety over flexibility. That meant fear was beginning to shape decisions, even if they refused to name it. Human command adjusted. The next strikes were quieter. No fleets appeared. No great battles followed. Instead, small human units slipped close to the Tyrant formations and released devices that did nothing at first. They drifted like debris, ignored by Tyrant sensors already overwhelmed by false data. Hours later, those devices activated. They did not explode. They did not emit energy. They simply altered local physics in subtle ways. Micro changes in gravity. Delays in signal travel. Tiny errors in time measurement. For humans, the changes were manageable. 4 Tyrant systems built on absolute precision, they were devastating. Weapon targeting drifted. Shield timing failed. Jump calculations became unreliable. Ships could still fight, but every action carried risk. A Tyrant cruiser attempted a short jump to reposition and vanished entirely. The Armada began to bleed ships without being attacked. Panic should have followed. Instead, anger took its place. The Supreme War Leader ordered a direct assault on the nearest human fleet. All remaining power was focused forward. The Tyrants would crush visible resistance and restore dominance through force. Human fleets did not retreat. They shifted. As the Tyrants surged, human ships split into smaller groups, weaving through the distorted space with practiced ease. Tyrant weapons fired in massive volleys, tearing through empty space and false targets. Human fire came in short bursts, precise and deliberate. Every burst struck something vital. A reactor node. A sensor spine. A command relay. Human ships withdrew before return fire could land. The Tyrants were fighting shadows guided by hands they could not see. Inside one Tyrant command ship, a senior strategist reviewed casualty reports and felt something twist inside its chest. Losses were no longer acceptable. Not because of numbers but because of cause. "We are being shaped," it said to its commander. "They decide where we suffer." The commander silenced it. But the thought did not die. Across the Armada, whispers spread through encrypted channels. Questions no one had ever asked before. Why did the humans always know where to strike? Why did space favor them? Why did retreat feel more dangerous than advance? The High Dominion demanded results. The Supreme War Leader demanded obedience. Neither could give answers. Human command escalated again. This time they targeted the Tyrant's oldest strength, their hierarchy. Human hackers, aided by captured Tyrant hardware and months of study, injected perfect false orders into isolated fleet segments. Not crude commands. Subtle ones. Slight changes in timing. Minor reroutes that seemed logical. Entire squadrons drifted out of position without realizing it. When those squadrons were cut off, human fleets struck hard and fast. No mercy. No hesitation. The humans destroyed ships completely, leaving no survivors, no data to recover. The message was clear. Isolation meant death. The Tyrants responded by pulling back even tighter, clinging to central command. The Armada became slower, denser, and easier to predict. Human command saw the pattern and allowed it. They were no longer fighting to survive. They were fighting to teach. On the human population world below, people watched the sky with quiet fear and stubborn hope. Supplies were rationed. Shelters held. Children were told stories of endurance, not victory. Humans did not need to believe they would win. They only needed to believe they could last. The Tyrants noticed that too. Their sensors picked up human communications. Simple messages repeated across channels. Hold. Keep moving. Not yet. The Tyrants did not understand why those words carried such weight. Then came the turning point. A massive Tyrant command vessel, one of the last fully intact, attempted to assert control by broadcasting a system-wide authority override. It was a display of power meant to end confusion. The humans had been waiting for it. The moment the signal spread, human systems locked onto it. The override became a beacon. Human fleets converged from all directions, appearing closer than should have been possible. The Tyrants fired everything they had. Human ships burned. Some broke apart. Others vanished in fire. The humans kept coming. They breached the command vessel with brutal efficiency. No speeches. No hesitation. Tyrant defenders were overwhelmed by humans who fought like they had nothing left to lose. Because they didn't. When the command vessel fell, something inside the armada broke. Orders stopped coming. Ships froze, unsure whether to act. Others fled in blind jumps, many of which failed. Collisions increased. Friendly fire incidents spiked. The Tyrants were not losing because they were weak. They were losing because they had never learned how to fight without control. In the High Dominion, the rulers sat in silence as reports collapsed into chaos. "This is impossible," one ruler said. "They should fear us." The scientists spoke softly. "They do. And they act anyway." Human Command issued a new broadcast. "Not to the Tyrants. To the galaxy. We are still here," the message said. "And we are not finished." Across enslaved systems, other species listened. Some began to hope. Others began to plan. The Tyrants felt something tightening around them. The hunt was over. They were being driven. And somewhere deep within the collapsing armada, a truth finally surfaced. Quiet, unwelcome, and impossible to ignore. The humans were no longer reacting. They were deciding what came next. The Tyrant armada was no longer an armada. It was a wounded mass drifting through hostile space, held together by habit and fear of disobedience rather than purpose. Ships stayed close not because it helped but because separation now meant death. The Tyrants had lost initiative. Worse, they had lost certainty. Human Command saw it clearly. This was the moment every simulation had warned about. Push too hard, and the Tyrants might flee in every direction, spreading destruction across the galaxy. Wait too long and the Tyrants might adapt. So the humans chose a third path. They would end the war without chasing victory. Human fleets pulled back at once. Not in panic. In perfect order. They vanished from the edges of Tyrant sensor range, leaving behind empty space and broken signals. The sudden absence shocked the Tyrant commanders. For the first time since the invasion began, there was no pressure. No attacks. No voices. Just silence. The Tyrants did not trust it. Scouts were sent out carefully, their paths slow and cautious. They found no traps. No hidden fleets. Human space appeared open again, almost welcoming. The Supreme War Leader interpreted this as weakness. "They have exhausted themselves," it declared. "They retreat because they can no longer fight." The order went out to advance. The armada moved forward in fragments, cautious but determined. Systems were entered one by one. Planets were scanned. This time human worlds did not empty. They waited. Cities remained active. Traffic flowed. Power grids stayed online. Human ships were visible in orbit, but they did not engage. The Tyrants hesitated. This was not how prey behaved. A Tyrant strike group descended toward one such world, weapons armed. Human orbital defenses locked on but did not fire. The Tyrants landed troops and met no resistance at first. Then human sirens sounded across the planet. Not alarms. Warnings. Human forces emerged from concealed positions with discipline that shocked the Tyrants. They did not charge. They formed barriers, channeling Tyrant troops into narrow zones designed for containment, not slaughter. The Tyrants fought brutally. Humans fell. Streets burned. But the humans did not collapse. They closed doors behind the Tyrants. Then the atmosphere changed. Local gravity shifted slightly, enough to throw off Tyrant balance. Air pressure dropped in controlled waves. Tyrant troops found themselves exhausted, disoriented, struggling to move. Human soldiers advanced calmly. The Tyrants were captured. Alive. That fact spread through the armada faster than any weapon. Humans were taking prisoners. Not to study. Not to torture. To end something. Human Command opened a direct channel. The Supreme War Leader accepted, surrounded by advisors who demanded execution, domination, annihilation. The human commander appeared on the screen. There was no triumph in their expression. Only resolve. "This ends now," the human said. The Tyrant leader snarled. "You are weak. You bleed. You hide behind tricks." "Yes," the human replied. "And we are still standing." The human commander gestured and data flooded the channel. Maps of Tyrant supply collapse. Fleet disintegration models. Projections that showed total Tyrant defeat, not in days but in weeks. "We do not need to destroy you," the human said. "Time will." The Tyrant leader stared in disbelief. "Then why stop?" "Because if we continue," the human answered, "too many others will suffer. And we are tired of paying that cost." The silence that followed was heavier than any threat. The Tyrants had never been offered an ending that did not involve domination. "What do you want?" the Supreme War Leader demanded. Human command did not answer immediately. They let the question hang. Finally, the humans spoke. You leave, they said. You release every species under your control. You dismantle your command structure. You never return to human space. And if we refuse? The human commander's voice hardened. Then we finish teaching you how fragile you really are. The tyrant advisors urged rejection. Pride screamed against surrender. But the data did not lie. The armada was trapped in space that no longer obeyed tyrant rules. Retreat would cost ships. Advance would cost more. Staying would cost everything. For the first time in their history, the tyrants faced a choice that fear could not solve. Across the galaxy, enslaved species listened in secret. They heard the human terms. They saw the tyrants hesitate. Hope spread like a quiet fire. The Supreme War Leader lowered its head. We will withdraw, it said. The words echoed through the high dominion like a fracture. Human command acted immediately. Safe corridors through distorted space were opened. Navigation paths stabilized temporarily, but only where humans allowed. Tyrant ships began the long, humiliating retreat. Human fleets escorted them, not as guards but as reminders. No attacks followed. No final strike. The war ended not with fire but with control. As the last tyrant ships exited human space, the distortions vanished. Space returned to normal. The trap was gone. Human forces stood down. The galaxy exhaled. On worlds long under tyrant rule, chains fell. Governors fled. Uprisings began. The tyrant empire collapsed inward, tearing itself apart as fear finally reached the top. Humanity did not chase it. They watched. In human space, memorials were built. Names were carved. Loss was honored. No one called it a victory. They called it survival. The tyrants had entered human space believing fear ruled all things. They left having learned something far worse. Fear could be endured, controlled, used. And when humans rose, fear no longer belonged to the tyrants alone. The retreat did not bring peace. As the tyrant fleets withdrew through the corridors the humans allowed, fractures spread through their empire faster than any signal could contain. Entire sectors went silent. Governors stopped answering commands. Slave species, long trained to obey, hesitated for the first time in generations, and hesitation was enough. The tyrants had ruled through certainty. Now certainty was gone. Human command knew this phase was the most dangerous. A wounded empire could still thrash. Rogue fleets could burn worlds out of spite. Fanatics could turn defeat into extinction-level revenge. So the humans did not celebrate. They prepared for the final risk. The Supreme War Leader requested another meeting. Not a demand. Not a threat. A request. It was granted. The meeting did not take place in a throne hall or aboard a warship. The humans chose neutral space. A simple station. No weapons visible. No guards in view though they were there. The tyrant delegation arrived tense and exhausted. Their armor was scorched. Their posture no longer carried certainty. They were powerful beings who had never learned how to lose. The human delegation was smaller. No medals. No banners. Just officers in plain uniforms, marked by fatigue and focus. When the channel closed and the room sealed, silence filled the space. The tyrant's Supreme War Leader broke it. You could have destroyed us, it said. Why did you stop? The human commander did not answer immediately. They studied the tyrant leader not with hatred, but with something closer to recognition. Because destruction was never the point, the human said. Survival was. The tyrant leader's eyes narrowed. You speak as if this war was forced upon you. It was, the human replied. And you still do not understand why. The tyrant struck the table. You were weak, divided, unworthy of notice. Yes, the human said calmly. That is what saved us. The tyrants had no response to that. The human commander continued. You have ruled for a long time. Long enough to forget what shaped you. You believe fear ends resistance. On our world, fear was the beginning. The human activated a projection. Earth appeared. Storms. Earthquakes. Wildfires. Predators. Disease. Human history unfolded in fragments. Wars. Collapses. Recoveries. We were born on a planet that tried to kill us every day, the human said. And when it failed, we tried to kill each other. Over and over. The tyrant delegation watched, unsettled. Fear never went away for us, the human said. We learned to live with it. To function inside it. To think while afraid. The projection shifted to human responses during the war. Calm evacuations. Silent preparation. Engineers working under bombardment. Soldiers holding lines without promises of victory. You thought we were retreating, the human continued. We were learning. You thought we were sacrificing worlds. We were buying time. The tyrant's supreme war leader spoke quietly. No species chooses loss. Humans looked at one another. Then the commander answered. Every species chooses loss, they said. The difference is whether you choose it once, or keep paying it forever. The room fell silent again. The tyrant leader finally asked the question that had haunted them since the first ambush. When did we lose? The human did not hesitate. When you assumed we feared you more than extinction. That truth landed like a physical blow. The tyrants had always believed themselves inevitable, unstoppable. They had never considered an enemy that measured survival in centuries instead of battles. You are not the strongest species we have faced, the human said. You are not the smartest. You are not the fastest to adapt. The tyrant stiffened. But you are the most predictable, the human finished. Because you never learned how to lose. Outside the station, the galaxy listened. The meeting was being broadcast. Not secretly, openly. Human command had chosen transparency as its final weapon. Across former tyrant systems, other species watched their rulers struggle to answer simple truths. They saw fear in beings who had claimed it was impossible. The tyrant's supreme war leader bowed its head. We cannot rule the galaxy you have revealed, it said. Our empire was built on silence. And silence breaks, the human replied. The tyrant leader looked up. What happens now? Human command had debated that question for months. We will not replace you, the human said. We will not rule. We will not punish your people for what your empire became. A murmur rippled through the galaxy. You will dismantle your central command, the human continued. Your fleets will disarm under supervision. Your subject species will choose their own futures. And us? The tyrant asked. The human's expression hardened slightly. You will live, they said. And remember. That was the harshest sentence the tyrants had ever received. The agreement was signed. Not with ceremony. With relief. As the tyrant delegation departed, something unseen shifted across the galaxy. Former slave worlds declared independence. Defensive coalitions formed. Trade resumed along routes long closed. The tyrant empire collapsed not in fire but in absence. Human fleets did not move to claim territory. They went home. On Earth and its colonies, people watched the broadcasts in silence. There were no cheers. Too many names were etched into memory. Too much had been lost. Children asked what would happen next. Adults answered honestly. We will rebuild. The galaxy took its first breath without the tyrants. And in that quiet, a new truth spread from system to system. Humans were not saviors. They were not conquerors. They were survivors who had shown the galaxy something terrifying and undeniable. Fear did not belong to tyrants. It belonged to the future. And humanity had learned how to walk into it with open eyes.